I want to talk about Shabbat for a few minutes. And I want to do it in a way that I doubt you've ever heard before, because I had this idea and I haven't heard anybody else develop it. So we speak throughout human history of times when we have achieved progress. Specifically, we have identified that there are certain revolutions that have occurred over the course of our history that have ostensibly brought us to a better place. So here I want to give credit to Yuval Harari, Israeli-born thought leader who wrote a book called Sapiens about human development. And maybe you've read it, and maybe you've read the sequel, Homo Deus. And so he speaks about these revolutions, and each revolution, it brought progress, but there was a downside. So bear with me. I want to share the progress, but the downside of each of the revolutions and what Shabbat has to do with each and every one of them. So starting with the agricultural revolution. So we remember learning this in high school. So human beings were hunter-gatherers. We moved from place to place. We were nomadic. And we only gathered and hunted that which we needed for survival. And then we started to settle in certain areas and we started to till the land. So Harari says, on the one hand, good. You didn't have to hunt and gather for your food every day. You could, remember the Joseph story, be able to store food for the future. But what was the downside? It harmed the earth. It harmed the soil. And also, if you are stuck somewhere and the land doesn't produce, then you are in trouble. And, argues Harari in his book, this was the beginning of inequality, economic inequality, because some people owned a great deal of lands and others didn't own any lands, and you started to see the stratification. So where does Shabbat come in? Shabbat is the day that we don't till the earth, that we remind ourselves that everything on this earth is a gift, and that it does not belong ultimately to one person any more than it belongs to another person. So when we allow on Shabbat the land to rest, we are demonstrating that this land, the gifts of the land, the fruit of the earth, ultimately, ideally belongs to everyone. So Shabbat has the potential to offset the downside of the agricultural revolution. I hope you're still with me. Next revolution, industrial revolution. So the industrial revolution increased profit. It increased the capacity to put out products into the world. It certainly increased wealth, all of the positives. Downside, pollution, and the gap between haves and have-nots grows and grows and grows. Also, more and more people start to evaluate their entity, their worth, based on what they produce in the marketplace. So people who produced a lot thought that they were really special, and people who didn't produce very much, who were marginalized after the Industrial Revolution, start to think that they're not so special. What does Shabbat do? Shabbat reminds us that our self-worth doesn't come from what we produce in the marketplace. That's important, and certainly if we can provide opportunities for other people, that's wonderful, that's all well and good. Our self-worth comes from the fact that we each bear a divine spark, which is why when we say Kiddush, we speak about Ma'aseh Bereshit, we speak about the wonders of creation. Shabbat reminds us that we are valuable because we carry God's spark within us. Each one of us carries that spark. We are not to be evaluated entirely or even primarily by what we bring to the marketplace. And the third revolution that I want to put forth as part of this grander theory is the information revolution, and specifically right now dealing with the implications of artificial intelligence. Now, many of us make use of AI. If you're writing a letter, if you are organizing a conference, we were planning a road trip, and you just type in here to Cleveland, and all of a sudden it spits out, I don't know how it does it so quickly, all of these things that you can do. So there are many positive ways for us to use AI. We also are seeing the limitations and the dangers. People who are engaging with sources of AI as though they are human beings who care the way that another human being cares. So where does Shabbat come in? On Shabbat, we are sitting at the table. We are sitting at the Kiddush. We are greeting people in real space and in real time in ways that remind us that human beings bring something to this world that is the opposite of artificial. It is the most real. Even when we forget, that's more real perhaps than when we get everything perfectly right and ordered. When we have an emotion that overtakes us, when we are thinking about a loved one who has passed on, when we are giddily watching a couple standing under the chuppah, when we are in the presence of a baby who screams through the baby naming from beginning to end, hopefully not so vociferously. All of that represents the human gifts that we bring to this world. The opposite, exactly, the opposite of artificial, that which is very, very real. So I'm laying this out for us. I want us to consider that our tradition through Shabbat reminds us that often there is a downside to what we put forth as progress. And for us to realize ultimately at the core that we have a deep faith that human beings are unique, that we are each infinitely valuable, that in our success, but even in our missteps, we are bringing something precious to the world. We speak of Shabbat as Me'ein Olam Haba, as a taste of the world to come. I want to look at it differently. It is a blueprint for us of how we can make Olam Hazeh, how we can make this world, whether it be recognizing that we should all have a share in the earth's bounty, whether it be recognizing that our value comes from our divine spark, more so than what we quote unquote produce, whether it be acknowledging that our imperfections that are very, very real deserve to be amplified throughout the world, along with other forms of intelligence. Shabbat gives us an opening and a pathway how to move forward and really progress in this world. Shabbat Shalom.